everybody, and welcome to the Florida Today and USA Today Network's live stream show of SpaceX's first ever official U.S. Space Force launch of a GPS-3 satellite. Today, in only less than an hour, 55 minutes. I'm Space reporter Rachael Joy.
And I'm Antonia Jaramillo, and we are here at the Kennedy Space Center press side. We're on the roof of the Florida Today and USA Today blockhouse. Right behind us is NASA's iconic vehicle assembly building, and it's a little bit windy today.
It's a little windy today, but it's gorgeous. Weather is 60% go, so we're looking really good. It's beautiful. You can see blue skies, puffy white clouds, all the things that we love about Florida. It's hot.
Very hot, very humid. I kind of wish we were at the beach right now sipping on like a margarita.
Yeah. Why can't we do launch broadcasts like that?
I don't know. I mean, we
could do them from Cocoa Beach.
I think that'd be great. On the Cocoa Beach Pier, our coconuts.
Yeah.
Even 4th Street Filling Station had a launch viewing party for Demo 2.
Yeah, we need a Florida Today bureau out at the beach, basically.
Agree. I'm on board with that.
But I think this is officially the beginning of like the long, hot slog of the Florida summer, launch schedule. Like it's going to be like this for several months.
For sure. And I mean, it's funny because it looks like such beautiful, clear, like skies and everything, but weather's still only 60% go. Because if you look at the forecast, thunderstorms are supposed to come, and that's how it is the rest of the week because that's Florida in the summer.
That's Florida in the summer.
Yeah.
But we are super excited. We haven't been here in a month. It was a month ago.
Exactly 1 month since our last launch live coverage, because there has been 2 launches since then. But since our last show, which was the big, that was the big launch. That was the one we had been looking forward to for years. That was Demo 2. Yeah.
And those astronauts are still up in space, by the way. Bob Behnken and
Doug Hurley.
Thank you.
Bob Behnken is going to be doing a spacewalk tomorrow.
Oh, we have a question. What time is launch? Yes, super important. 3:55 p.m. is when the launch window opens. So 3:55 p.m. It's a 15-minute window.
Exactly. So they have until 4:10 p.m. to launch if they can't launch at 3:55, which is important because there are some launches, for instance, that are instantaneous, that they need to launch at that exact time or else it's scrubbed. When it's a launch window, though, they have some wiggle room.
That's right.
Which is crucial for when there's like iffy weather and everything, because then they can potentially still launch that day.
They can hold for a couple of minutes or deal with any last minute issues. So they've got that 15-minute window. So it seems like everything is good to go for today. There have been no issues that we've heard of.
None so far.
Yeah, so we're looking really good. We're going to talk a little bit about the actual mission. So SpaceX is sending the 3rd satellite in a series of 10 satellites. So this is the GPS-3 satellite constellation.
That's correct.
You all know GPS, Global Positioning System. We use it every day. We use it. We love it. We're all obsessed. We need it. We can't live without GPS at this point.
I don't know how people used to like navigate with actual maps.
I used to do that, Tony.
Yeah, so did my mom and my dad. I know.
I had maps.
Yeah.
Not me.
This is
I love it when you point that out. It's super fun. GPS-3 is an improved version of the GPS satellites that are already out there. We're going to get into those details later, but we're just kind of giving you the overview now. So SpaceX actually launched the first of the GPS-3 satellites
back in December 2018.
That's right.
Yeah, that satellite was called Vespucci after Amerigo Vespucci, the one who the Americas were named after. And then the second GPS satellite was launched on a ULA rocket, United Launch Alliance, and that one was called Magellan, after Christopher Magellan, who was the first to circumnavigate the world. And now this satellite, we just found out, is named Columbus, after Christopher Columbus, who was, as we all know, the one who discovered the New World. And I think it's interesting that they named it Columbus, because I understand they are clearly naming it after these explorers. However, just now in today's society, there is so much kind of backlash with Columbus, as we have seen just politically. And so it's
kind of a controversial
figure. It's a very, very controversial name. Whether or not you guys agree with that, it's still, you can agree that it is controversial now. There have been protests on even just taking down Columbus Day in general. And so
Interesting. I wonder if I'm assuming they made that decision quite a while ago.
Probably. Well, because we also just learned that they already named the 8th GPS satellite, and that's not going to be launching for a while.
Right.
The 8th GPS satellite, they're naming it after Katherine Johnson, after NASA's Katherine Johnson. She was one of the mathematicians. They used to call her computers back in the day when she worked at NASA Langley in Virginia. And she helped with the Apollo program, which obviously is what took the first man to the moon.
Made famous by the Hidden Figures movie.
Exactly, for sure. That was a great movie. Really enjoyed it. Did you like it?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, really good.
Yeah, that was good. So yeah.
Interesting. So it's a little confusing. You know, we're calling this SpaceX's first U.S. Space Force mission, and yet they've already launched one of these satellites. The reason why that is basically December 2018, like we said, was that first GPS-3 satellite for the Air Force. Space Force wasn't formed yet. So Space Force was formed only in December 2019. So it's only a few months old, the Space Force. So now it's kind of, in some ways, just a change in name, if you will. But the U.S. Air Force now falls under the Space Force umbrella. So this is now a part of the Space Force, the GPS-3 constellation.
Yeah.
So
so this is SpaceX's first Space Force mission. ULA also had their first Space Force mission a few months back. Remember?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, because even then on their on the fairing, they had the little Space Force logo. So I wonder.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it looks like the little Star Trek symbol.
That's right.
We didn't go out to remote camera setup today to see the rocket up close, but I wonder if they also have the Space Force logo on SpaceX's rocket.
We would be able to see it if we had a picture of the rocket. I actually don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. Other big first, though, for this launch is that this is the first time SpaceX is going to be recovering a booster for a national security space launch. So again, if we go back to that first time that SpaceX launched that GPS-3 satellite, the first one in December 2018, they did not recover that booster. It's actually something that SpaceX wanted to do, and the Air Force said no.
Out of an abundance of caution,
That's right. I think. Because it sounds easy, if you will, to go recover a booster. But the truth is, it's a huge deal, and it's a part of every step of the system of the launch. And so, the Air Force was like, we just want mission success.
Yeah.
We just want our satellite up into space and working. Your whole recovery booster thing, that's on you. We don't want to take those chances just yet. But since then, we've seen it be successful so many times that the Air Force and the Space Force have all agreed to go ahead and give it a try this time. So they are going to let SpaceX recover that booster.
Yeah, and that's great for SpaceX and everything. I wonder if they feel a little bit
What time is the launch? 3:55, dude. We also have it scrolling down at the bottom. 3:55 p.m. is when the launch is going.
That's correct. And if it doesn't go at 3:55, though, they have until 4:10 p.m. to launch, unless they decide no.
Right.
But it is a 15-minute window. Exactly.
We had a Starlink launch ready and set to go on Friday. Weather was also 60% go, 70% go. So it was not a weather issue, as far as we know.
It was a technical issue, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, what SpaceX said was that the teams needed more time for some pre-launch activities. That could mean anything, I think, basically.
Well, definitely not for us to know.
Right.
We wouldn't know.
But point is, weather was good. We were all here. We were ready to go, and that launch was scrapped. SpaceX decided to stand down, and they did not move forward with that launch. So anything can happen. This is rocket science, after all.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Yeah, I don't.
We're just happy to be here.
For sure.
It's still very, very quiet.
A little bit.
It's still very quiet here at Kennedy Space Center. They're still at phase, what is it called? 3?
Oh.
2? I don't remember. Sorry.
I think it was still phase 3.
3.
They haven't gone down any phases, correct?
No.
And phase 4 would have been then that it's even the press site would be closed at phase 4. No. So yeah, for people who are wondering what we're talking about, these phases, it's basically just kind of the amount of activity that I guess is happening here at the Space Center. So phase 3 essentially means anyone who can is required to work remotely, as is most of the world, honestly. And yeah, but at least they haven't gone up any phases, so that's still good news. But yeah, it's very, very quiet. I think we're probably the only reporters out here at the press site too.
I have a feeling Bill at CBS is tucked away in the CBS.
Oh, you think so?
blockhouse. I do.
Do you think maybe Marsha Dunn at AP is also in there too?
You never know. It's nice to imagine that they're here somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I know she definitely goes here even for like these teleconferences.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, of course, we have Emery Kelly, our third space reporter, part of the Florida Today space team. He's
That's
right
correct.
below us.
He's right below us with some nice air conditioning.
Yes. Oh, I did bring our fans.
Thank you.
So there's the Apollo fan.
Thank you.
It's the Launch America fan.
That's correct.
It does help a little bit. The heat.
We can hope.
Yes. So everybody, we are here at Kennedy Space Center. We are only a few minutes away from the 3:55 launch of the SpaceX launch today of a Space Force GPS-3 satellite. It's actually launching from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station.
Launch Complex 40.
So we're at Kennedy Space Center, so we're not at the launch pad, but we can still see it from here.
Yeah, we can. We don't have that great of a view of Launch Complex 40 as we do of Pad 39A and Launch Complex 41, but we will definitely see that rocket when it goes over those trees over there. And it doesn't look too cloudy right now, so we'll be able to see the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping. You know.
We'll hear it.
Oh, for sure.
That's
We will
the best part
definitely hear
anyway.
that. Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah, the best part is especially then when sometimes when the boosters come back and land here, and then you hear the sonic booms, and then you yell out of shock. That's always fun.
Oh, when I do that?
Yeah.
Yes. It gets me every time.
I know. It also gets the cars. Always the car alarms start going off.
So today that booster is going to land on just read the instructions.
Yeah, which isn't normal. Well, isn't common. It is normal. It's just not common. Usually when boosters land on do a drone ship landing in the Atlantic Ocean, it has usually always been, and lately, on the Of Course I Still Love You drone ship. But now it's on the just read the instructions.
Yeah. I think that drone ship has been getting an upgrade.
Oh, okay.
So in the press conference last week, Lee Rosen at SpaceX said that it actually is just fresh off of coming through the Panama Canal.
I read that in your story.
Up the Atlantic. So I'm assuming that means that that's where they were doing the upgrade. So I think that's why we haven't seen it in a while.
Okay. Yeah.
So that is going to be exciting, and we're really loving to see always that video of when that booster lands.
For sure, that is very exciting, and don't get me wrong, super cool. They're doing
Are you over it already?
No, I just wish that they would do more drone ship. No, not more drone ship landing. More landings here on land.
Oh,
I miss hearing the sonic boom.
It's fun.
I miss seeing the booster come back. I mean, that's it's like
for sure.
It's like, why does the drone ship get all the glory?
But isn't that only for Falcon Heavy?
No. They there have been. For a lot of CRS missions, which are the cargo resupply missions that go up to the International Space Station to just give science experiments and food to the astronauts that are living there, they have had a lot of booster returns back here on land. In fact, my first launch that I watched here at the press site, it was also the booster was supposed to land here at Landing Zone 1 at the Air Force Station, but instead it landed in the water. And everybody blamed it on me because it was my first launch. So it's like, you're bad luck. I know.
That's not nice to do that.
It was fun. They meant it fun.
I think we've been good luck. It was you and I that knew that Demo 2 was going to go.
Oh, for sure. We had
Everybody else was
positive energy that day, and I told you, we need to be here for things to go well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So 3:55 p.m. is the launch time, everybody. We are 60% go with weather. It's looking gorgeous, as you can see.
Yes.
And this is a SpaceX launch of a Falcon 9 rocket carrying up a GPS-3 satellite. You know GPS, Global Positioning System. We all use it every single day in our cars and our phones and our everything. We can't get anywhere anymore without GPS.
But now we're going to find out more about this specific one.
Yeah.
Because it's more than just what we know it for, which is just navigation.
That's absolutely right. I mean, it's huge military applications.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it's a wonderful application for us in our daily lives, but the military is what's really using these satellites to communicate with each other and all the things that they're doing. So they need high-tech, high-power satellites that are anti-jam, super secure, super accurate. So they just keep improving the technology in those satellites.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
There's going to be 10 total in this new GPS-3 constellation, and this is the third of the 3. We do know that SpaceX is contracted for 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
But then
the last 4,
7, 8, 9, 10
are up for
grabs. So interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Is ULA going to get those contracts? Who's going to try to swoop in and get those contracts?
Exactly, because it's like, who else will be in the in the market. I mean, because when will those launch and everything? It's so far, this is the third, and it's been about a year and a half to launch 3. So by the time we get to number 7, I don't know, will Blue Origin be a contender?
Maybe that New Shepard will be ready to do something.
Yeah, we'll see. Is it New Shepard or New Glenn?
Shepard is involved too.
New Shepard is the one that's doing the suborbital flight,
okay,
and
gotcha.
New Glenn is the newest one that would do orbital flights, right?
Okay, gotcha.
I just do it because Shepard's obviously named after Alan Shepard, who flew first.
That's right.
And then Glenn is after.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they'll be ready by then.
Yeah.
Good job, Chica.
Well, maybe I'm totally wrong.
Okay, SpaceX 355. I actually think we're going to have Chip joining us soon with Lockheed Martin, and he's going to explain the GPS-3 satellite. Hi, Chip.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Good. Now, I didn't even attempt to say your last name. Can you pronounce it for us?
Sure, it's Chip Eschenfelder.
Gotcha.
Where is that from, if I may ask?
It's I think originally a German last name.
Oh, okay.
Someplace back 4 or 5 generations ago.
I like
Very cool. So Chip is with Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is who is building the GPS-3 satellite constellation. So we wanted to have Chip come on and explain more about the satellite to us. Can you tell us more about the upgrades that are specific to the GPS-3 constellation, and then what is specific to this 3rd satellite?
Sure. I mean, you guys were dead on talking a little bit about GPS and how, we use it every day. We kind of jokingly say not only you use it every day, you use it multiple times a day. We're all glued to our phones, as you were talking about that. As civilians walking around, we'd be dependent to be able to find out where we're going, whether we're getting to a coffee shop or downtown or whatever. But you got to understand a little bit about GPS. As civilians, we're dependent on 31 satellites that are in orbit right now. That's what makes up the GPS constellation. And some of those satellites that are up there were launched back in the late 1990s and early 2000s. And they were state-of-the-art technology back then.
Sure.
But, when you think about how fast technology moves and things, times have changed, and the needs of GPS and actually the needs of not only we as a nation and the 4 billion GPS users of the world, but also the military have changed. And we're part of what the Space Force is calling the GPS modernization. They're doing redoing the satellites, they're redoing the ground stations, they're doing the military ground equipment type of thing. So we're part of the GPS constellation modernization. That's what GPS-3 is. As you mentioned, there's 3 satellites that have been launched already. There's up to 10 what they call GPS-3 satellites that we're under contract for. They're actually going to launch potentially up to 22 more GPS-3 follow-on. They'll call them GPS-3Fs to be fancy.
Okay.
Off of that, we're under contract for 2 of those right now, but they will add even more capabilities. So you kind of mentioned about like GPS-3, what it's going to bring, besides just refreshing the constellation with like new technology and new capabilities. It's going to be 3 times more accurate. For our military users, it's going to have an 8 times improved anti-jamming capability. For civilian folks, though, it's got an interesting, a new signal that's being added, a civil signal. And if you look at the evolution of GPS over time, as new designs of satellites have come on, new signals have been added and new capabilities. So this new L1C civil signal is a signal that is compatible with other signals that are generated by international global navigation satellite systems, which are new to some people, but there's other places in the world, the European Union, that are making their own GPS-like system. It's called Galileo. You hear about those launching every once in a while, and they're all going to broadcast this L1C or an L1C compatible signal. What that means for you and I is, we're walking around and you hear it every once in a while. Someone says, "Oh, my GPS went wonky," like that, and their blue dot moved in a strange way. I think, well, it's not really the GPS that's doing that. It's us, the users. We're moving behind buildings. We're moving in valleys. We're moving behind mountains. And when that happens, the receiver in our phone loses the direct line of sight of 4 satellites, and that's when things kind of start getting a little bit wiggy, and we kind of lose this connectivity. And what will happen in the future is you'll not only have 31 GPS satellites that you're receiver will be able to connect to, but maybe another 30 Galileo satellites, maybe some other internationals. There'll be more points in the sky that it can get its signal from, if you want to call it like that. Less chances you'll get interrupted.
Okay. So, Chip, is this then the first major upgrade for the GPS satellites since they were first launched back in the 90s and early 2000s?
Oh, they were satellites had been launched back into the 1980s. We're 25 years right now of celebrating what the Space Force calls full operational capability of having GPS. That's when they had 24 satellites up. I think it was in April was when they celebrated 25 years of that happening. So the GPS 3s are an entirely new design of GPS satellite, so that they can have more power. They're going to be the most powerful GPS satellites ever put on. More power, more capability. They're also designed in a way, oversimplify, but they're built in a modular way so that we can put in kind of plug and play new technology, new capabilities. So if the Space Force decides that they want to have a new mission capability, and they'll give us mission electronics, and we can plug that right in. A perfect example of that is this whole GPS 3F program that's going to happen afterwards. It's going to use the baseline GPS 3, and it's going to add a new regional military protection, which is like a super up power for the military folks again. They're going to plug and play a search and rescue payload, which basically means like a search and rescue emitter that will be put into the satellites. So think of those spread out all over the world in the sky. It's going to add extra protection, extra safety for folks. Of course, you got to get those satellites up there so you get that type of coverage, but it'll be there. And that's one of the cool things about GPS 3 is they're going to be able to plug new stuff in going forward as they need to.
Absolutely. So, and what about it and the more accuracy? I mean, can you explain more about what the military uses the GPS 3 satellites for?
Oh, sure. It's always reported. That they use them for. Certainly it helps with their guidance systems on military equipment, weapons. But I mean, there are thousands of troops moving around the world at all times. In vehicles like we have and aircraft. So they are as dependent on GPS and reliant on GPS as we are as civilians. But they're often, moving into dangerous areas, harm's way. I mean, when you deploy around the world off of that, it's not a vacation. You're doing tough stuff, and GPS helps to keep them safe.
I'm curious about the manufacturing. How long does it take you to make one satellite?
From scratch, I think. I would have to go back and look at exactly what that is. It's somewhere around a 2-year time frame.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. It's a big satellite. This is not a micro satellite by any means. This is a large satellite.
Yep. We're kind of making them. We have them. We make them right here in Denver. That's where I'm calling you from. No illusion that I'm on the beach or someplace sunny with you guys. Off of that, I wish I was. But Denver is Lockheed Martin's GPS processing facilities headquarters. If you looked out on the floor right now, it looks a lot like a commercial production line. There are, you would see looking out there right now, satellite number 4 and number 5 are done, and they're just waiting to get called up, send them to the Cape off of this. 6, 7, and 8 are fully assembled satellites, and so they go through a lot of rigorous testing afterwards, including a lot of space simulation types of testing that they face the hot and the cold of space, and have to operate in it and prove that they can do that before we turn them over and call them ready for launch. And satellite 9 and 10 are kind of in a component buildup right now, small parts being built into bigger parts, and then at the end it all comes together to make a satellite.
Love it. Yeah. Fascinating. Now, do you want to ask about this Columbus controversy?
Well, yeah, I am curious. So Chip, we heard that this spacecraft, this GPS satellite, is named Columbus, and I'm assuming it's after Christopher Columbus. Is that correct?
That's what my understanding was too. Yes.
And so I understand. I'm assuming it's probably kind of after they're like they're following this, sort of kind of explorers series of, after the first one was named Vespucci, the second one was named Magellan, and now this third one is Columbus. But I think it's a little bit controversial that they named it Columbus, just after all the controversy that has been with that name, with the man himself, even the holiday that they have. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. It's a fair question, and I'll tell you that they picked the names, as you said, they were kind of picking explorers. When they originally came up with the idea, and it was kind of an inside tradition amongst the GPS team, with industry, and with with the Space Force going through. So the name was picked a long time ago, and probably in a laundry list of other names that they were looking at. You mentioned that Katherine Johnson for satellite number 8 was going to be named. So which is a great honor, and it was exciting to go ahead and hear that one coming through. So I'll tell you, I can break a little news for you. It's my understanding that Space Vehicle number 3 is no longer Columbus. It is being referred to as Matthew Henson.
Oh.
And you go, who was Matthew Henson? Matthew Henson was.
Officially, this third satellite is no longer Columbus.
That's correct.
Okay, when did that change happen?
That he's been named Matthew Henson. Matthew Henson was a black Arctic explorer. You may have heard of Robert Percy. He had a number of trips to the Arctic, I believe in the early 1900s, going through, and Mr. Henson went with him. And I'd heard that the Space Force changed that name the other day.
Oh, well, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly very glad we brought it up.
Definitely, yeah, Matthew Henson. And so as you mentioned, also the 8th satellite is named after Katherine Johnson. Do you know
Correct.
what 4, 5, and 6 are named?
I've heard whispers. They kind of keep it quiet, what happens. So there's a process in the GPS satellite production where basically they build up all of the electronics side of the satellite into they call it a mission module, but it looks to you and I, it would look like a big box right off of this. And there's another major component that comes through, which is the propulsion core, which is technically the satellite's engine. It's the engine that the satellite uses to get to its final orbit, to maintain station keeping. So these are like the two in the end, before it is a space vehicle, as we call it. There's these two major pieces, and they have an event that's called core mate. And in core mate, they lift one up with a big 10-ton crane, and they lower it down on top of the propulsion core, and it comes together to form, we call it then at that point, it's a space vehicle. And so that's our tradition is when someone says, well, when did the satellite come to be? We say it was born at core mate. It was born at that time, and that's usually when they give it its nickname.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yep. So it's kind of like an internal tradition of the production crew and the government and industry team that's working together. I've seen "It's a Girl" signs before. They get into it. That's
funny.
Morale builder.
So I don't want to lose you, Chip, but I do want to go ahead and update our audience. We do know that launch has been pushed to 4:10 p.m.
The end of the window.
That's
so
right.
That means now they need to launch at 4:10 p.m. or they are scrubbing.
Right. And we do know that it's also due to winds. And so we are here, and it is windy.
It's a little bit windy.
That. I'm sure you can see Antonia's hair blowing all over the
For sure.
place.
My hair, I'm frozen on the screen, so the public can't, the audience can't see it.
But I'm sure they did see it.
But they did see me struggle.
Yeah. So 4:10 p.m. is the new launch time, and it's the end of the window. So it's either 4:10 or it's not happening.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wonder. Yep, Chip. Fingers crossed. Absolutely.
That's right.
I did want to ask you. This launch was scheduled for back in April, and at that time it was pushed due to coronavirus concerns. Now I understand that because you've had some time since then. Safety protocols have been put into place in many of these sites, here locally at Kennedy Space Center, not at Kennedy Space Center, at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, the 45th Space Wing. They've obviously been following lots of protocols, but there in Colorado, where there's the team that actually tracks, the satellite and all that kind of stuff, you did some things there. What can you tell us about what you did?
Sure. I think it was a good call. If you think back in April, coronavirus was something very new, right? So, and certainly people were taking extra precautions, I think smart precautions, thinking people first. And that's kind of, I think, the approach that the Space Force took. One of the factors of that certainly was, what we call our launch and checkout facility in Denver. And your viewers may not know this, but during a launch, my satellites get to ride on a nice rocket, and once they reach a certain altitude, they have something called separation, and that's when the satellite leaves the rocket and it's on its own, and it uses its own propulsion system to get to its final orbit, and then it does on-orbit testing and things like that happen there. Once it leaves the rocket, somebody's got to be controlling it, and that's what happens from the launch and checkout facility. And they launch it and they check it out, to make sure that everything's good once it's onto orbit. And that has a crew of operators who are there that spend some long hours, and will spend some days after the launch making sure everything's good. And they wanted to make sure that the facility there was set up in a way that they could do proper social distancing, which hadn't been a consideration, much like we all sit next to somebody at a desk in the office back then. So they put some barriers into place, and found ways to do some different things with crews so that they wouldn't have folks sitting right on top of each other, and would provide better protection.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Okie doke. Well, oh, geez, we are having a little bit of a technical issue. I guess we are a black spot all of a sudden. Hold on a second, Chip.
Not a problem.
This is
So we're just gonna leave the studio and then we'll come back in.
okay. Well, that was your snazzy video.
You saw some great footage there of them putting together a satellite. Of course, some of it's in time lapse because it happens a little bit slower than that, but it's the best way. But you saw the big gold thing being lowered down on the big dark thing, and that was a satellite being born.
Oh, that's the moment.
Nice.
Yep.
That's the satellite birth moment, and when they get the nickname.
So are you excited for this launch trip? If you could, would you be down here right now to watch it live?
I would be. I would be. I usually come down and go out onto the causeway and talk with folks out there about what's going on. But travel is not an option right yet. So we're staying home and staying safe.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on today and filling us in. That was so awesome. Thank you so much.
No, this was a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Catch you later.
Catch you later.
Bye,
Rachel.
Chip.
See you later, Antonia.
Okay, well, I think it looks like we're live streaming again, so that's good. We had some technical issues. Yeah, that's the joy of live streaming. But it seems like all the internet is having trouble. Our phones are sort of doing that too, so we might have just had like a little bit of a dropout, or who knows, but
Yeah,
I think we're better now. Yeah. So we have an update. 4:10 is now the launch time. So that is the end of the launch window. And we know it's due to winds, and it is windy. So
And wind is usually the big factor with weather that scrubs launches. It's always those upper level winds and everything that tends to scrub launches, but not just upper level winds, also ground level winds and everything. And it's it's kind of funny to think of because you're like, it's a rocket. Really, some wind is going to like affect it, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely does.
Yeah. Do we know a backup launch date? I believe it's tomorrow, but
I think, yeah, it's a 24-hour delay.
Okay.
Would be for tomorrow. I can also pull up the time. I think it's a.
I feel like it's similar. Let's see if we can find out.
1 second. It would be tomorrow. Would be at 3:51 p.m.
So very similar.
Exactly. Yeah, at another 15-minute launch window opening, it would open. The launch window would open at 3:51 p.m. Except weather looks worse for tomorrow. It's only 40% go for tomorrow.
I hope this isn't like last week. Last week was sort of just every single day chasing this Starlink launch, and
Which never happened.
which never happened. Which, you know, that's launch life. It's just how it goes sometimes, and it can be a little frustrating. And we got all the way to Friday, and we thought it was going to happen, but it still didn't happen.
You know, at least we had the weekend though. To imagine if it then still, if they would have pushed Saturday or Sunday, and then you would have gone out there
True.
and worked, and then it was also then pushed. And you're just kind of like, what a waste.
I know, but I mean, it's not a waste. It's always exciting. It's always fun. We're chasing launches. That's what we do for a living.
Chase rockets.
We chase rockets. So hopefully this one is going to go today. But if not, we'll be back tomorrow.
Absolutely.
That's what we do.
That's exactly what we do.
So what is happening today is a SpaceX Space Force launch of the GPS-3 satellite. This is part of a constellation of 10 satellites. You're all familiar with GPS. It's Global Positioning System. It's that technology that we use in our phones, in maps. It's just so critical to everyday life at this point.
And this is the first Space Force launch for SpaceX.
Mm-hmm.
So big deal for them. First time then, like you said, that they'll recover a booster for the government.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, they've done it now so often, but I do wonder then if they feel this kind of added pressure because
I'm sure they do, because
right?
they want more contracts.
Sure.
You know, I mean, they've got the 4, 5, and 6 lined up, but 7, 8, 9, and 10 are still up for grabs.
Yeah,
and Lee Rosen last week on a call with reporters, he said, you know, SpaceX is super excited for this launch, and we really hope it's, you know, the first of many, many, many more.
Yeah.
So they want those contracts.
Absolutely. Of course they do. I mean, why else would I want to be here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we've said it's windy, and yet I'm still fanning myself.
No, I'm not feeling the wind so much. I mean, as you can see, my hair isn't that crazy. If anything,
true.
it just feels puffier, feeling the humidity.
Yes.
I can't tell you how badly I just want to go run to the beach and then just like crash into the ocean. Just want some water.
The good news is you can do that as soon as this is over. Those are the perks of being in Florida.
That's true. I should have brought my bikini on.
Oh, well, I'm sure they'd like that. Oh, folks, we're getting weird. It's because it's hot. It's like 95 today, 92, 95, something like that.
Yeah, last night checked 93 degrees, and that's hot.
It's toasty.
That's very toasty, especially like you guys can't see, but we're wearing pants right now, and they're black. And that just like absorbs more heat.
So I don't know if you can see behind me, but that NASA meatball logo is freshly painted. It is just shiny and blue, and the red pops and the white pops, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It kind of makes the flag look a little dull now.
So dull. Well, because they were already both like
Faded
from the sun. So they were repainting then the meatball, which they did, and it looks great. But yeah, now the flag, it's just totally night and day. They need to repaint that flag.
I hope they are.
I hope. Well, I'm assuming they are. I mean, who doesn't?
Now, here's what I don't know. What was the blue and the red in the flag at one point the same color as the blue and the red in the NASA logo, or is it a deeper blue and red? You know, because it's the American flag.
I've always seen the blue to be a deeper blue,
right?
Than that blue, because that blue.
Yeah. So maybe.
Yeah. No.
It won't be the same paint colors, but
not.
Still a refresh would be nice.
The same red, and
Maybe.
obviously white.
Yeah.
But the blue should be much darker.
More of a navy blue.
Yes, exactly.
But it sure looks pretty.
Is this the same Falcon 9 rocket that sent the Dragon to the ISS last month? My mom's asking. No, this is not.
No.
I don't.
And it's a new booster too.
Oh, there you go. So then this is the first Falcon 9 rocket. we
Mhm.
go. That's what I meant.
We cannot hear Antonia. Well, what
Can you hear me
happened?
now?
That's not good. Did you get unplugged?
I don't think
Check
so.
your plugs.
They're good. Can you hear me now?
Rob, why don't you just tell us if you can hear us?
Nope. I sent you a text, so no.
I'm sorry, but you can hear me?
I can hear you. Tony's going in and out.
Ay, ay, ay. Well, the technology today is just not liking us. I'm just not having luck with the technology today.
You could just try with the earbuds.
Okay, right. How do we do that? Because I don't think it's gonna automatically do that. Go there and then go back to sound.
Better. It's hit or miss, Tony.
Well, we just unplugged them. How about now, Rob, if we're just using the AirPods?
She has to talk for me to hear her.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's really faint, so you're gonna have to speak up.
Okay. We can do that. We're loud talkers.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you guys hear us? Sorry about the technology issues.
Yeah. That's never been this bad before.
I know. But we were talking about the astronauts that are up in space right now. Bob Behnken, Doug Hurley are up there, and they've been busy. They've been doing spacewalks.
Yeah.
They've been doing tons of testing on the Dragon capsule.
And that's primarily what their mission was,
Mhm.
to do the testing on the Dragon capsule. And so far, Dragon apparently has been functioning like amazingly. That's all NASA has reported, that Dragon is doing really well. The spacecraft is great. And now we actually have a return date for these astronauts. Bob and Doug are supposed to come back on August 2nd, correct?
Well, they certainly didn't guarantee August 2nd. They said that August 2nd is the first potential date that they would go for.
Mhm.
So it's, and who knows, these things do tend to slip a little
For
bit.
sure.
So I think that it was nice to hear a date to really start to give us a sense of like, oh, they're really going for it.
Mhm.
So whether it'll be August 2nd, I don't know,
Yeah,
but maybe
I think
mid-August.
I mean, I know they're at least definitely trying to aim for the summer.
Yep.
They want to return the astronauts back this summer.
Yep.
So, but it's interesting because then the astronauts would come back this summer, and then there would still only be one American astronaut, one NASA astronaut still on board the space station, Chris Cassidy, until the October Soyuz launch, which would send NASA astronaut, I forgot who the female astronaut, what her name is. But anyways, they'll be sending another astronaut. But that's in October, so it'll be another like 2 months that Chris will be all alone.
Right.
Yeah.
It's doing well though.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't asked him, but I'm sure.
Seems like it.
Okay.
No, but it could be potentially a busy fall here,
Absolutely.
especially when we have
Busy
that Crew
summer,
1 launch.
Busy fall. Busy everything. Busy winter.
It's been a busy launch season.
It's been a very busy launch season. This is going to be our 14th launch from the Space Coast. I think last year at this time we had only had about 6 launches. Maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, less than half if I'm not mistaken. So for sure, and SpaceX has been the one dominating. They
Yep.
have launched. I mean, with their Starlink launches, they just are there,
Absolutely.
boom, 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 boom.
Absolutely. So, hi everybody. We are here at Kennedy Space Center. We're at the Florida Today blockhouse roof. Below us is actually our space reporter colleague, Emery Kelly. He is also reporting and doing all the coverage from down there. And we do know that the launch has now set for 4:10 p.m. There's some issue with the upper level winds. So we are, oh, that was a bee.
That was a bee. It's
A
okay.
large bee.
You know what? We need bees.
These are awesome. Anyway, 4:10 p.m. is the launch. And
It was originally 3:55.
yes,
And it's only a 15-minute launch window. So now that it's 4:10, that means they pushed it all the way to the end. So
that's right.
if they want to launch today, they need to launch at 4:10. If not,
Pressure.
yeah, for real. Not they're launching tomorrow. The launch tomorrow will be at 3:51 p.m. Weather doesn't look great for tomorrow. It's only 40% go.
Yep. And this is the launch of a GPS-3 satellite. It's a Space Force satellite that they'll be sending into space, hopefully today at 4:10 p.m.
I do hope today. I hope.
We always do.
Yes.
We always do.
Do you think it'll launch today?
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. I knew that was coming. Yes. No, I don't.
You don't think it'll launch today?
I'm not feeling it.
You know, I mean, now that they pushed it all the
I
way
know,
to the
that
end,
scares me.
It does scare me too. I'm not feeling too.
Our feelings are usually pretty accurate, I gotta tell you.
I mean, it's not. I'm not saying
No,
that
I know.
we are
I know.
great predictors, but you can decipher that. However,
Yeah.
there's another word for that.
No, we're not fortune tellers. No. Psychics? Launch psychics? No. Launch predictors?
No, I don't like the word predictor.
No.
I said that I'm a predictor.
No. What is going on though in terms of the rocket, in terms of the milestones that we're at right now? Because it is 3:46.
Yeah, so we are, what is it, T minus 19 minutes? So at T minus 19, well, technically, at T minus, so the last big milestone happened at T minus 35 minutes. That's when we started fueling the first stage, so fueling the rocket. The next big milestone happens at T minus 16 minutes. So that'll be in 3 minutes. And that's when then the second stage of the rocket begins fueling. So in the Falcon 9 rocket, there are only two stages. The first big stage, which is, well, the wind is definitely turning up now.
Yeah, it is.
The first stage, which is the largest component, and that's the one that returns back to land. And then there's the second stage, which that then goes to space and is what then deploys the spacecraft. And that's it. Those are the components of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. For NASA's Saturn V moon rocket, for instance, that had 3 stages.
Big rocket.
One, yeah, very big. It was 363 feet tall. Yeah, NASA Falcon 9, I think, is only like 280.
It's amazing when you see those little side-by-side photos.
Oh, I know.
Charts.
Even like when we go out to the pad and we see Falcon 9, it just looks like tiny and teeny. And it's still a rocket. I mean, this thing is still big, but it is interesting. So anyway, so that's the next big milestone at T minus 16 minutes. And then after that, really then it's just then what is called engine chill. So it's to making sure that the fuel is at a certain temperature, that is liquid oxygen that they're fueling into that rocket. And so that needs to be at a precise temperature to make sure that everything is good to go and it can ignite that baby. And after that, it's really then just like kind of final checks that the launch director is giving before they say liftoff.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I haven't heard anything right now of a scrub or a delay. So
we're still go. We're still a go. Absolutely, this launch is still happening.
Yep. Yeah. No, I'm checking right now.
What story are you working on in terms of the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center? Were you able to get in touch with them?
So it's funny. So the reason you're asking me that is because, as I'm sure most of the people in our audience have heard and have seen, there have been a rise in COVID-19 cases, especially here in Florida. And so it's definitely interesting then to see what kind of is happening then with the visitor complex, because they opened on May 28th. So
they reopened.
Yes, they reopened after having been closed for over 2 months. And they opened up like everything else, also at limited capacity, requiring masks. But with the rise in COVID cases, it's interesting to see if they're still getting a good turnout, if they're still making a profit. And so I reached out to them, and they got back to me, but it was a very, very kind of like PR response. It was just them saying, we're just following CDC guidelines, we're at reduced capacity, we're asking people to pay for tickets and reservation and everything, which I didn't assume they weren't not doing, and that's not what I was asking. I wanted to see really how they're doing with now these new guidelines and with the fact that there's a surge. But they didn't answer that whatsoever. So I really don't know. I don't know if they are still doing well enough to stay open, or if they're considering closing.
When is the next launch of Boeing Starliner? Greetings from Mexico City.
Hello.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Hola. So great question. We don't know the launch date. I'm sure if you're even asking that, you are aware of the issues that's happened with the Boeing Starliner. They had their OFT launch back in December, It didn't quite go perfectly as planned. They had some software issues. They had some communication issues. They went ahead and did an investigation into that, a NASA and Boeing joint investigation. And then NASA actually issued something called a high visibility close call. And they decided they wanted to look even further into the issues at Boeing and kind of find out what happened that would have led up to these issues happening with Starliner. That investigation is actually done, and NASA will be releasing the results of that very soon. So all of that is to say, that's why we don't have a date for the new OFT. OFT stands for Orbital Flight Test. So the Starliner still is going to do a second orbital flight test to basically prove that it can get into orbit, get to the International Space Station, dock with the ISS, and come back. But they are very hopeful that it will be this year. And I think that sounds pretty good. Boeing actually just released a really cool video, I think that was this morning, of another parachute test that they did. So that means they're moving forward. They're doing more testing. They are making all the fixes that they need to make in terms of their software. And, the parachutes are looking really good. So we're all super hopeful that we're going to see a second OFT by the end of this year.
Absolutely. Everyone was hoping that it wouldn't be an OFT, that we would be seeing their first crewed flight test, but that didn't happen. So now we need to go and hope now for a good Starliner test.
Yep.
Apparently my mic is still sounding really bad.
But compared to me?
Yes, that's what Rob was saying, that you sound great, but me, no.
That's so weird.
I don't know if maybe this AirPod is just like dying out of juice, like it's dying out of battery. If so, maybe we should try connecting back these mics and change.
You actually sound fine now, but it's very intermittent during when Rachel's asking you questions.
You know what it is? We probably have to we're sharing a pair of AirPods, so we probably have to be super careful about not talking over each other.
Maybe. Okay, we can try that.
We're just gonna have to stick with it till the end of this live stream, and we'll figure it out for the next time.
Yeah, we got 17 more minutes until launch. Launch is now at 4:10 p.m., you guys. And I now don't feel any wind whatsoever.
No, it's gone.
It's very, very, very hot. In fact, that little light breeze that I felt is from Rachel's fan. So yeah. So
out of nowhere, it's just a stagnation.
Ooh.
I wish they could launch right now.
We
This is no. There is not nothing.
I need some like.
Well, it looks like we all still are freezing a little bit. Well, let's just give it a minute to catch up. We're at Kennedy Space Center, and we are 3 satellite. Just having a few technical issues here today. I'm going to blame the heat.
You know what, though, if we are able to, we can now, if Rob can for technical difficulties.
Turn off your laptop as well, you know.
Rob, if you are able to switch into SpaceX's speed, let us know.
Great. All right, guys, we are going to SpaceX. Here we go.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, June 30th, and on your screen is a live view of the Falcon 9 awaiting its 4:10 Eastern Standard Time launch from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. My name is Shiva Bharadwaj, and I'm a space operations engineer here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. And welcome to our webcast.
All right, can you guys hear us now? Are we good, Rob, or am I still sounding iffy?
You're still sounding iffy, but at least you're back.
Hey, everybody.
We're back.
Okay. Well, everybody, that was just a brief little moment of the SpaceX coverage. We'll go back to that in a second. We're just here to tell you that we are at Kennedy Space Center, and we are getting very close to a 4:10 p.m. launch of the GPS-3 satellite. And I think we have all reason to believe it's moving ahead. We haven't heard anything different. And I think we should just go to the SpaceX coverage and stick with that till we have a launch.
Or if we don't.
That's right.
Our two-stage liquid-fueled launch
All right,
vehicle
we'll see you guys soon.
getting ready for launch. Falcon 9 stands about 230 feet tall, which is greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft. Now, the bottom two-thirds of the vehicle is a brand new first stage, and its job is to accelerate the entire vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere up to the edge of space. Now, unlike our first GPS-3 mission from December in 2018, we will be attempting to recover the first stage on our drone ship named Just Read the Instructions, and it's currently stationed about 350 nautical miles off the east coast of Florida. We worked with our customer following our earlier GPS-3 mission to ensure that we maintained more than enough performance margin for both the primary mission and a chance at recovery today on that first stage. Now, above the first stage is the second stage, and about 2.5 minutes into flight, it will separate from the first stage. Then it'll ignite its single Merlin vacuum engine to carry the GPS-3 satellite into a highly elliptical orbit. The apogee, or the highest point of that orbit, will ultimately end up at about 20,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface, at which point the satellite will then separate and then perform some burns to enter into a circular medium Earth orbit about 20,200 kilometers above the Earth. You'll also notice that the second stage fuel tank is painted gray today, and that's so we absorb a little more heat from the sun while we're not eclipsed by the Earth. That helps the fuel tank stay at the proper temperature for today's mission when we go into the Earth's shadow. Now, at the very top of the rocket is the payload fairing. The GPS-3 satellite is currently enclosed inside of it, and it's 17 feet in diameter. It protects the satellite from aerodynamic heating, loads, and contamination during the ascent portion of the mission. But once we reach the vacuum of space, we'll jettison those fairing halves back to Earth while the second stage continues to take the satellite to orbit. The fairing halves that we're using today are brand new, and we will be attempting to recover them using our recovery ships, Miss Tree and Miss Chief. However, we aren't planning a catch attempt today, and instead we'll scoop these out of the water later on this evening. Now, finally, next to the rocket is that large truss structure that we refer to as the Transporter Erector, or TE. The TE rolls Falcon 9 out to the launch pad, raises it to the vertical launch position, and also routes power, fluids, and communication to both the rocket and satellite.
Good afternoon. I'm John Innsbrucker, Falcon 9 Principal Integration Engineer here at SpaceX. We're coming up on 9.5 minutes to launch, and to get to this point, we rolled Falcon 9 out to the pad Sunday night, about 41 hours before launch, and we went vertical on the pad at roughly 10 a.m. local time yesterday. The chief engineer held his technical poll at T-1 hours, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go, no-go poll at T-38 minutes. The vehicle is healthy. We are currently working, no issues. Now, if we do have to call a hold on today's launch, we have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 3:51 Eastern Time in the afternoon. That's about 4 minutes earlier than today's opening of the window. Now, right now, we're targeting the end of the window just after 16:10 Eastern Time for liftoff. Now, after the go, no-go polls, Falcon 9 has been loading propellants. It began at T-35 minutes. We began with fuel going into both the first and second stage, oxidizer into the first stage. For fuel, we use a refined form of kerosene known as RP1, rocket propellant grade 1. Our oxidizer is a super chilled liquid oxygen, and we call that LOX. Now, currently, the second stage that you can see outlined with that gray paint that Shiva mentioned, that fuel is completely loaded. We're still loading fuel on the first stage. That'll go until T-6 minutes. And as you can see from the plume streaming off of the first and second stage LOX tanks, we are continuing to load liquid oxygen onto both of those stages right now. We're also loading helium gas onboard storage vessels on the first and second stage. The Falcon 9 uses helium gas as a pressurant in the fuel and the LOX tanks. As the Merlin engine pumps pull RP1 and LOX out of the tanks, we have to fill the empty volume, what we call ullage, with helium that is heated by the engine. Heating the helium helps expand it to fill the tanks. Now at T-7 minutes coming up here, engine chill will begin. We'll hear that call out. This is where we allow a small amount of the super chilled liquid oxygen to flow past the turbopump inlets. That cools them down to avoid thermal shocks when we light the Merlin engines at T-2 seconds. Finally, you can see to the left of the rocket is the transport erector, what we also call the strongback. That will retract away from the rocket about 2 degrees at T-4 minutes. That gives the necessary clearance for Falcon 9 to begin the liftoff sequence. Now, on top of Falcon 9, we have the spacecraft. The spacecraft team has transitioned the GPS satellite to internal battery power. That happened at T-15 minutes. They're working no issues, and there are no further actions required of the satellite before launch. We're launching out of the eastern range, and currently the range is go. They're ready to support. The air and the sea space is clear around us. They've also been launching the balloons for us to help get the weather. The weather from clouds, lightning, electric fields right now is go. What we've been watching is the upper altitude winds. The gradient from one altitude to the other has been borderline where we might exceed the load capability of Falcon 9. We are currently go. We will get one last weather balloon piece of data coming up here in a couple of minutes. But right now, all systems continue to be go for a liftoff just after 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, today's mission is for the United States Space Force, and we're launching the GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 3 as our payload. Now we'll hear from Lieutenant Colonel Margaret Sullivan, Material Leader of the GPS-3 Space Vehicles, and Tanya Ladwig, Acting Vice President of Navigation Systems at Lockheed Martin, to learn more about today's satellite.
We use GPS every day.
Today, everyone has GPS technology in their pocket.
25 years of space-based position, navigation, and timing, supporting the entire world.
GPS touches the lives of everyday people all the time. It's changed the way we work, it's changed the way we play with over 4 billion users worldwide. We're already preparing for the next generation of GPS satellites with our GPS 3 follow-on contract, and we're inserting greater technology for greater capability.
The brand new United States Space Force owns this premier asset and provides this position, navigation, and timing service to everyone.
And for all personnel on the countdown, we have an update from GNC informing us we have a good weather balloon. Proceeding on with the countdown. T-minus 4 minutes, 20 seconds and count.
Today's GPS-3 Space Vehicle 3 mission is dedicated by the Space Force to the memory of Colonel Thomas Falzerano, and we will hear directly from General Raymond and others who knew and worked with him just before we enter our first coast phase later on in the broadcast. Now we're currently just inside 4 minutes from liftoff. We did get the good news just a moment ago that the latest weather balloon is go for launch, so we're going to continue to count down. We've begun retracting the transporter erector strongback away from the Falcon 9. You can see it on your screen. Moves back a couple of degrees to get us ready for liftoff. Now the Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. The vehicle remains in good health. Fuel loading is complete on both the first and second stages. Liquid oxygen loading will wrap up shortly on the first stage and will complete at T-minus 2 minutes on the second stage. At 1 minute before liftoff, you'll hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup. That means the rocket's own internal computers on first and second stage are controlling the launch countdown. The GPS-3 space vehicle continues to be go. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. The weather has turned green for us here in the last minutes, and the range continues to be green for launch. Now again, as a reminder, if we don't launch today, we have a backup opportunity at 3:51 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.
First stage launch load complete.
Launch director has just called out that the first stage LOX load is complete. We're now loading just liquid oxygen on the second stage. Approximately half a minute, LOX loading should complete on stage 2. T-minus 2 minutes. That announcement tells us that that chill-in that we began at T-minus 7 minutes has lasted long enough. And we are good for the ignition sequence on the Merlin engines coming up in just over 1 minute and 40 seconds. Now coming up in the background, you can see some white plumes coming off of the strongback. There's a nice view. We have completed loading the second stage. We're now draining the liquid oxygen out of the plumbing that goes up that structure alongside the rocket. And as we vent off the gas, you get that nice long plume you see there where that humid Florida air meets the ultra cold gaseous oxygen, condenses, giving you that nice white fog. That's normal for this point in the count.
Falcon's in startup. AFTS configured for flight.
Launch director is announced. We're inside of a minute. We are in startup on the flight computers. We are also beginning to pressurize stage 1 and stage 2 for launch.
Mission director is go for launch.
We've heard the final call outs. Mission director, launch director are go for launch. So at T-minus 30 seconds coming up, all systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with GPS-3 space vehicle number 3.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff. Go Falcon, go GPS.
Vehicle is moving down right.
T plus 40 seconds. We've heard callouts. And now we're entering the throttle bucket. We're powering down the Merlin engines to relieve the acceleration as we get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket. Now we're beginning to power back up. We hear the call out exiting throttle bucket. The 9 Merlin 1D engines going back to full power. And we are now supersonic.
Max Q.
Guidance engineer calls out max Q, the period of maximum dynamic pressure, or Q, on the vehicle. From this point forward, although we go faster and faster, the thinner atmosphere will put less loads on the airframe of the rocket. Coming up next is chill-in of the upper stage engine. We've got a good trajectory.
And back engine chill started.
We've begun the chill-in of the upper stage engine. Power on the Merlin 1D engines looks good. Avionics reports everything is nominal. We're 2 plus 2 minutes into flight. Next major activity in half a minute, shutdown of the 9 Merlin engines, separate the first and second stage, and ignite the second stage engine to carry GPS and the second stage into the first of 2 orbits today. This one will be the initial parking orbit. Falcon 9 preparing for MECO.
And MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
And we've confirmed ignition of the second stage engine after a good stage 1, stage 2 SIP. You could see briefly the Falcon 9 first stage in the background.
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
Call out that both vehicles are following the planned trajectory. First stage continuing to coast to apogee, where it'll then slowly turn around and descend back to the drone ship for landing in the Atlantic Ocean. The second stage engine beginning the long burn to get it into the parking orbit.
Acquisition of signal, Maryland.
Coming up, fairing deploy. Waiting to see the camera switch forward.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And we've got fairing separation. The 2 halves of the Falcon 9 fairing separating, the pneumatic system unlatching the locks that hold it together, and then the pneumatic pusher separating the 2 halves. As the fairing falls away from the vehicle, we can see on the left side of the screen the grid fins, the large titanium castings that are mounted to the first stage have deployed. They'll be used later as we come back into the atmosphere for precision guidance of the first stage to land on the drone ship. On the right-hand side, we see the second stage engine continuing to burn. It's at full power. Everything's looking good with the trajectory. So at just past T plus 4 minutes into flight, everything is go on the flight of Falcon 9 with GPS 3, space vehicle number 3.
T plus 4 minutes and 25 seconds into flight. We're currently in the first of 2 planned Merlin vacuum engine burns. Currently looking at the data, The second stage engine burn is nominal. On your left-hand screen, you can see the first stage as it's performing that reorientation that John and I talked about. The grid fins are deployed, and you're seeing some thruster plumes there from the attitude control system that are getting it ready so that the 9 Merlin 1D engines are pointed towards the atmosphere as it re-enters into Earth's atmosphere. Beautiful views of the planet beneath both the first stage and the second stage. Second stage is continuing into its burn. We're expecting this burn
Both
to
vehicles
last
continue to follow nominal
5 minutes and 15 seconds. And entry burn will actually begin on the first stage in just about a minute from now. During the entry burn, we'll ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. That'll give us a chance to slow down the stage as it ends up re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and reduce the aerodynamic loads as it starts to bite into the thicker parts of the air around our planet. You can see the Merlin vacuum engine on your right-hand screen, the nozzle extension there growing red hot. That's expected. We're really, we have such a long nozzle extension on there to try to get the most performance out of the pressure coming out of the thrust chamber on the second stage engine. So coming up here in about 15 seconds is entry burn. Watch for that on your left-hand screen. That'll ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines while second stage continues to burn towards that elliptical orbit with the GPS vehicle on board.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn has started.
There's successful ignition of the 3 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. We're expecting this burn to last just about 30 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
You see some bursts there. Successful shutdown of the engine and some attitude control bursts just to get that orientation right. Now, once we get into the thicker parts of the atmosphere where those grid fins have some aerodynamic control authority, they will do most of the guiding to take the first stage towards our drone ship named Just Read the Instructions, which is about 350 nautical miles off the east coast of Florida. Coming up at about 50 seconds from now, we'll have 2 events happening about the same time. The first stage will ignite its single center Merlin 1D engine for landing burn. About the same time, the second stage will perform secondary engine
Stage
cutoff.
2 has entered terminal guidance.
Or SECO number 1. While those 2 things occur about 25 seconds later, the first stage will hopefully touch down on our drone ship. In between, they're deploying its landing legs. So watch for that on your left-hand screen.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Drone ship AOS. Stage 1 landing burn is starting.
Ignition of that center Merlin engine on the first stage.
SECO 1.
Successful confirmation of shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine. The guidance engineer is evaluating the orbit of the second stage now.
Nominal parking orbit.
Nominal parking orbit,
Landing
that's
legs
exactly what we want to
deployed.
hear. Landing leg deployment looks like right down the center.
And
Looks
stage
like
1
a
is
successful
landed.
landing.
Recovery operators move into
I see it first stage. Excellent. So that's, we first flew Falcon 9 10 years ago, actually this month. Since then, it's completed 88 missions, now the most flown operational rocket in the United States. This mission completed its first landing, and hopefully we'll have many more to come.
Stage 2 expected.
The vehicle is now, we're actually going to enter into our first coast phase, now that we know that the second stage is in a successful parking orbit. That coast phase will last about 54 minutes and will end with our second stage relight at about T+1 hour and 3 minutes. We're going to come back shortly before that to cover the second engine start number 2. Now, as we had mentioned,
Hey everybody,
mission-
we are back here at Kennedy Space Center, and that was an amazing launch. It was beautiful.
We
Peterson
didn't
Air
think it
Force
was going
Base.
to happen.
Well, we had a minor moment of,
That's right.
of just getting a little.
We were a little bit nervous, but it happened.
Wind died,
Thank
and there was this
goodness.
perfect pocket, and they went for it, and it happened. It was gorgeous.
And it was a successful landing too. So successful launch, successful landing of the first stage booster, all around good news.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back for the next one. We really appreciated having you here, and it was a great launch. Good job, girl. Woohoo!
Awesome. We did it, you guys. Bye.